work, baby. I just lost 100 pounds. I'm trying to live. I ain't going.
Say what, say what, say what. You know that about it. And that's where I went wrong. Nothing coming by. You end up losing everything you love. It's gonna be a little too late to chill in the hood. Up to now. Place you back. Place me back. Spinning big faces on the way that she go. Pretty young thing in a chick. I don't wanna bore you. Let's get come on tonight. You know that I love you. But I wanna be that cat that makes you moan. See, don't be shorty got eyes on me. You just don't treat them bad. Oh, how I feel.
Donell Jones should have been a legend. Not just R&B famous, but mainstream iconic. A name whispered in the same breath as Usher, Ne-Yo, or even R. Kelly at his peak. He had the voice, the pen, and the momentum. But just when it seemed like he was about to take over, he vanished. And no, he didn't just fall off. He walked away. At the height of his career, with platinum plaques and hits under his belt, Donell Jones turned his back on the machine that made him, or maybe tried to make him. And the reason? It's deeper than label drama or one bad album. This story has addiction, betrayal, sabotage, and a comeback you probably never even heard about. But here's the crazy part. Unlike so many artists who crash and burn, Donell didn't let the industry destroy him. He outsmarted it. Stick around till the end, because the real reason Donell left the spotlight flips everything you thought you knew about what it takes to survive in the music business. Before Donell Jones ever became a solo star, he was already moving like one behind the scenes. Most people don't realize this, but Donell was penning hits for major artists before the world even knew his name. He co-wrote Think of You, Usher's first breakout single, and contributed to Madonna's Bedtime Stories album. That alone should have told the industry he wasn't just another R&B crooner. He was a songwriter, a producer, an architect of sound. So when Donell finally dropped his own music, it hit different. His 1999 album Where I Wanna Be didn't just make waves, it made a statement. The title track became an instant classic, with its brutally honest take on love, commitment, and emotional conflict. It wasn't just smooth vocals and catchy hooks. It was real, vulnerable, relatable, and the rest of the album backed it up. Ooh Know What's Up featuring Left Eye had clubs on lock. Shorty Got Her Eyes on Me stayed on the radio, and his ballads hit just as hard as his up-tempos. Critics loved him. The streets loved him. The R&B world was ready to embrace him as the next big thing. And the industry? At first, they played along. Donell snagged an American Music Award, went platinum, and started appearing on major platforms. He was working with heavy hitters, touring alongside legends, and building a loyal fan base that actually bought albums. In an era when artists needed the full package. Voice, looks, pen game, presence. Donell had it all. Quiet confidence, smooth delivery, and a unique ability to make heartbreak sound beautiful. Everything was lining up. He wasn't just rising, he was on track to dominate. So how does a guy with that much talent, that much momentum, just vanish? That's the part nobody saw coming. Because while it looked like Donell Jones was on top of the world, the cracks were already forming underneath. On paper, Donell Jones had it all. The voice, the pen, the plaques. But behind the scenes, the industry was already setting him up to fail. See, Donell wasn't your typical R&B star. He wasn't just singing songs written for him. He was writing them, producing them, crafting his sound from the ground up. And in the music business, that kind of independence, it's a problem. Because labels don't just want talent, they want control. And Donell? He was never built to be controlled. He wrote his own records. He picked his own beats. He didn't want some executive in a boardroom telling him what to sound like. And while that made him a real artist, it made him a nightmare for the machine. So the label did what labels do. They tightened the leash. First came the budget cuts. Less money for marketing, fewer resources for videos, barely any promo. Then came the interference. For his 2002 album Life Goes On, they started forcing outside producers into the mix. People Donell didn't want to work with, who didn't understand his sound. The result? An album that still had moments, but didn't get the push it deserved. And when it didn't meet the label's expectations, they ghosted him. No radio campaign, no major tour, no damage control. They didn't try to course correct, they let him sink. Quietly, strategically, like he never mattered in the first place. And just like that, Donell Jones, the same man who was once writing for legends and topping R&B charts, was no longer a priority. But here's the thing. The label wasn't the only one turning on Donell. Because while the industry was slowly pulling away, Donell was starting to spiral. And the next chapter of his story? It gets way darker. While the music industry was quietly washing its hands of Donell, he was making it way too easy for them. Behind the scenes, Donell Jones was spiraling. The pressure, the disappointment, the politics, it all started to bleed into his personal life. And like so many artists before him, he turned to the one thing that numbs the noise: alcohol. What started as casual drinking turned into a daily escape. Studio sessions blurred into parties, and parties blurred into blackouts. His relationships started crumbling. His focus was slipping. And the man who once poured his heart into love songs couldn't keep his own life together. And then came the night that changed everything. Donell was riding in a limo with friends. According to reports, they asked the driver to take them to Washington Heights, allegedly looking for substances. The driver refused. And that's when things turned ugly. A confrontation broke out, and Donell ended up arrested for harassment and possession of a weapon. It was messy, public, embarrassing. The exact kind of scandal the industry loves to use as a final excuse to cut ties. Now, it didn't completely destroy his reputation, but it gave the label all the justification they needed to officially step away. No more damage control. No more second chances. Just silence. And Donell? He didn't fight it. He kept drinking, kept pushing people away. Bridges burned, relationships ended, and the music, once his therapy started to fade into the background. Then came the moment that nearly cost him everything. One night, while visiting his kids, Donell made a decision that could have ended in tragedy. He drove them to a birthday party, completely intoxicated. He got pulled over. The officer smelled alcohol on his breath. He was arrested for DUI with his children in the car. That was the wake-up call he couldn't ignore. Because at that point, this wasn't just about music anymore. It was about survival. The DUI was Donell's breaking point. It wasn't some tabloid scandal he could sweep under the rug. This time, the consequences were real. His kids were in the car. He was arrested. And in that moment, he saw exactly what he was becoming. Not a misunderstood artist. Not a victim of the industry. Just a man losing everything. He looked around and realized the damage wasn't just public, it was personal. His career, on life support, his relationships, falling apart. His mental state, hanging by a thread. And worst of all, he was starting to believe the industry was right to walk away. But instead of letting that moment define him, Donell finally did something he hadn't done in years. He took responsibility. He checked himself into rehab. No PR spin, no comeback rollout, just him, alone, finally facing the demons he'd been running from since the day he signed that deal. For the first time in years, there were no studio sessions to distract him, no fake friends in the VIP section, no label execs trying to mold his sound. Just silence and healing. Getting sober wasn't easy. It forced him to confront every bad decision, every burned bridge, every time he chose alcohol over the people who loved him. But slowly, step by step, Donell started piecing himself back together. And here's the thing. the industry didn't care. There was no welcome back party, no label waiting with a contract, no media coverage of his recovery. As far as the public was concerned, Donell Jones had disappeared. But in that silence, something powerful happened. He found clarity. And for the first time in a long time, he was in control. Fresh out of rehab, Donell Jones was a different man, sober, focused, and ready to take back everything the industry had taken, or that he had thrown away. He wasn't just trying to make music again. He was trying to start over. And in 2006, it looked like he might actually pull it off. He dropped Journey of a Gemini, his first project since getting clean. It was raw, honest, and full of the signature Donell Jones sound fans had missed. No gimmicks, no trend hopping, just real R&B. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard R&B chart, proof that his name still held weight. I'm Gonna Be started climbing the charts. The buzz was building. Fans were hopeful. It felt like Donell was finally getting his second chance. But right when he needed the industry to back him, they pulled the rug again. The label refused to film more music videos. They slashed the marketing budget. They cut off tour support. One minute they were hyping his comeback, the next they were radio silent. It was déjà vu, only worse. Because this time, Donell had fought tooth and nail to get back to this moment. And just like before, the machine he helped build turned its back on him. And you have to wonder, was it really just about sales? Or was it personal? Because Donell had always been a thorn in the industry's side, too independent, too in control, too unwilling to play the game. And in an era when labels wanted artists they could mold, Donell Jones was a reminder of everything they couldn't own. So the push stopped. Again. And just like that, the comeback fizzled before it could fully take off. But Donell wasn't done yet. If the industry wouldn't give him a second chance, he was going to take it himself. By 2008, Donell Jones was officially off the map, dropped from Arista Records. No major label deal, no radio push. For most artists, that would have been the final chapter. The slow fade into where are they now? Territory. But Donell, he wasn't ready to be a footnote. Instead of begging for another deal or chasing the next trend, he did something the industry didn't expect. He went independent. In 2010, Donell dropped Lyrics, his first album under an indie label. And surprisingly, it did okay. No flashy rollout, no million-dollar campaign. Just solid music and a fan base that hadn't forgotten him. The album debuted at #9 on the R&B charts. And the single, Love Like This, even got some airplay. Not bad for an artist the industry had already counted out. But here's the truth. The label execs never admit independent success doesn't hit the same. Without a machine behind you, you're grinding on your own. No big marketing budgets. No major playlist placements. No sponsored tours. Every stream, every ticket, every spin, you fight for it. And even when you win, you're still playing catch-up. Still, Donell kept going. In 2013, he dropped Forever, another solid body of work that showed he hadn't lost his pen or his voice. The title track was a tribute to Michael Jackson, and the album debuted at #3 on the R&B charts. The respect was still there. The talent? Undeniable. But mainstream coverage? Practically non-existent. And maybe that was the point where Donell finally accepted it. The industry wasn't going to give him his moment. His era had passed. The new R&B wave, slicker, more commercial, less soulful, was in full swing. But instead of chasing a sound that wasn't his, Donell chose peace over popularity. He didn't sell out. He stayed real. And that choice would end up changing everything. By 2014, Donell Jones had made a decision that most artists never find the strength to make. He stopped chasing the spotlight. After years of fighting for his place in an industry that constantly overlooked him, Donell finally realized that peace was more powerful than praise. That year, After nearly a decade of ups and downs, he married his longtime partner, Jazz. It wasn't a flashy celebrity wedding or a PR move. It was quiet, real, grounded. For once, his life wasn't revolving around music or fame. It was about family. That's when his priorities shifted. Instead of chasing another record deal, he launched his own label, Candyman Music. Instead of trying to force his way into an industry that never fully embraced him, he started working with artists on his own terms. No more corporate interference. No more A and R meetings. No more begging for budgets. Donell was done being the product. He became the boss. And that quiet move, that was his real comeback. He focused on what he loved: writing, producing, collaborating. His classic tracks stayed in rotation, and his influence could be heard in a new generation of R&B artists, even if they didn't always say his name out loud. He wasn't trending, he wasn't viral, but he was free. He didn't need validation from the charts anymore. He had something way better: ownership, love, sobriety, control. And maybe that's the plot twist no one saw coming. Donell Jones didn't just survive the industry. He escaped it. He didn't become the next Usher or the new R. Kelly. But maybe that's a good thing. Because while most of his peers are still stuck in contracts, fighting for scraps, Donell's over here owning his music, running his label, and living on his terms. And honestly, that might be the biggest win of all. Here's the part the music industry doesn't talk about. While most of Donell Jones's peers are still fighting to buy back their masters, Donell already owns his. That's right, no label eating off his catalog, no shady contracts draining his royalties. Every stream, every sync, every check goes straight into his pocket. In a business where legends like Anita Baker and Taylor Swift have to launch full-scale battles just to reclaim what they created, Donell played the long game. When the industry dropped him, he built his own. When they stopped promoting him, he promoted himself. When the machine tried to erase him, he quietly made sure they could never take what mattered most: the music. And here's the kicker: Donell's catalog still holds weight. Where I Wanna Be isn't just nostalgia. It's still soundtracking breakups. You Know What's Up still hits at the cookout. His pen game is still respected in writing rooms. And his independent releases? Slept on, but solid. He's not chasing trends. He's not begging to stay relevant. He's good. Because at the end of the day, Donell Jones walked away with something most artists never get: creative freedom, financial independence, and peace. The same industry that once boxed him in now has no power over him. No deadlines, no label politics, no forced collaborations. Just Donell, his music, and the life he built outside of the spotlight. He may not have become the superstar the industry wanted, but he became the artist he was always meant to be. So, was Donell Jones blackballed by the industry? Or did he low-key sabotage his own career? The truth is, it's not that simple. Yes, the industry undervalued him. Yes, the label boxed him in, clipped his wings, and pulled support when he needed it most. But Donell made mistakes too. He let addiction take control. He burned bridges. And when it was time to fight back, he stayed quiet. But maybe that silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was strategy. Because while the industry moved on to the next shiny thing, Donell was building something real: ownership, legacy, peace. And decades later, he still has what really matters: his music, his freedom, and his story told his way. He didn't become the face of R&B, but he became one of its most underrated survivors. So what do you think? Was Donell Jones a hidden legend the industry tried to erase? Or a talented artist who got in his own way? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want more stories the industry would rather keep quiet, you already know what to do.